Open the podcast bay doors, Hal.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 183 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits, but I found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. As another month wraps up, I want to be sure to shout out my patrons once again. The usual crew is here: Mike Sterling, Justin Bailey, Lily and Sam Breen, Jesse Clark, Ricky Garvin, Rob Garrison, Aaron Woodward, Aaron Borst, Carla Hoffman, Julio Herrera, and Matthew Saint. Thank you as always. And if you want to join in with helping the show out, it's just $1 per month, and that gets you this monthly shout-out, as well as audio outtakes and full scripts of every written show. Originally, this week's episode was going to cover more of the lesser-known X-Men, but some big news made at the San Diego Comic-Con inspired me to set that aside for next time, so that I can cover a question that many of you, if you also heard the news, might be asking. If you haven't heard, then I'll be breaking that news for you right now. With Jonathan Majors understandably fired, the fifth Avengers movie has been renamed from The Kang Dynasty to Doomsday, and Doom is now set to be played by none other than Robert Downey Jr. So the question is, what's the relationship between Doom and Iron Man? Of course, Doctor Doom is best known as a Fantastic Four antagonist, but over the years he has fought against nearly the entire Marvel Universe, so it's only natural that he would cross paths with Iron Man at least once. Especially when you consider that they are both gifted scientists that encased themselves in a suit of armor in order to achieve their respective goals. It's almost inevitable that stories would be written to compare the two. And in 1981, David Michelinie, Bob Layton, and John Romita Jr. set out to do just that in a 2-issue story titled Doom Quest. Invincible Iron Man issues number 149 and 150, the latter of which was double-sized as a special anniversary issue, are where it all happens. When Tony Stark discovers one of his employees approved a sale of electronic components to Latveria, he sends Iron Man to stop the shipment and refunds the money. Side note, this is during a time when Iron Man's identity is a secret to all but a few, so I'm mostly treating them as two separate people, as most people in the story do. However, Doom doesn't take no as an answer, and so refuses the refund, and sends some of his lackeys to retrieve the goods. Since Iron Man isn't able to stop them, Tony travels to Latveria to take back the items himself. Once he's there, he changes back into the Iron Man suit and arrives at Doom's castle to confiscate the merchandise. Unsurprisingly, this leads to a fight between the two, and taking advantage of the moment, one of Doom's henchmen, who was angry at Doom for killing his brother in an issue of Fantastic Four, activated Doom's time machine and sent the pair back to the Age of Camelot, destroying the machine's controls after activating it in order to prevent their return. While there, Doom allies himself with Morgana Le Fay, who agrees to help Doom get his mother's soul out of hell, one of Victor's constant motivations, in exchange for him leading an army of undead to kill King Arthur. Iron Man is able to force Morgana to retreat, and the army literally collapses. With Doom's ally now gone, he realizes the only way back home is for he and Iron Man to use parts of their respective armors to make a crude time machine, and he suggests this course of action to the Armored Avenger. Once Doom gives his word that neither will take aggressive action against the other until at least 24 hours after their return, the pair use their incredible intelligence and engineering skills to return home. In the story, we get a thought balloon of Doom saying, "If Tony Stark's underlings are this intelligent, he himself must be a genius." While Tony, still hidden under his Iron Man armor, admits that, "Outside of Reed Richards, I've never known anyone with such an intuitive grasp of electronics." Doom's respect for Iron Man's intelligence continued when, years later, after the events of Secret Wars, the 2015 story that led to a soft reboot of the Marvel Universe, Victor decided that he wanted to work as a force for good rather than personal gain. In his reformed state, both figuratively and literally, as the events of Secret Wars ended with his face being fully healed, Doom became an ally of Tony's, then his replacement after Tony fell into a coma. The 12-issue series The Infamous Iron Man, written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Alex Maleev, showed Doom in an Iron Man-like armor, defeating supervillains like Diablo, Mad Thinker, and the Wizard, while the Thing, not believing in Victor's change of heart, tries to hunt him down. Post-Secret Wars, Sue and Reed were traveling with their kids across the multiverse, leaving Ben and Johnny at home. Mostly due to the manipulations of Mephisto, Doom does eventually return to his villainous ways, also getting his face re-scarred after confronting many criminals who were mad at his betrayal. But thanks to that story, we now see one way that Doom and Iron Man could be the same person. However, there's a much more recent story that my personal theory crafting went to when I heard the news that Robert Downey Jr. would be returning to the MCU as Doom. And that's a story from writer Jonathan Hickman, with art by Brian Hitch in the original miniseries and other creators involved as it spun off into some new ongoing series, in the new Ultimate Universe. Now, a little backstory here, but we'll get to the connection between Doom and Tony eventually. If you're a regular listener, you may remember that the Ultimate Universe was originally created to be able to tell updated versions of the origins and early adventures of various Marvel characters, allowing for an easy entry point for new readers. However, as time went on, the Ultimate Universe got large enough to have its own history, making its original purpose somewhat moot. And so the stories shifted to ones that were too dark or extreme for the regular Marvel Universe, and became a place where writers could make permanent changes that would never hold in the standard timeline, like the death of Peter Parker, with the origin of Miles Morales soon following, and most importantly for this episode, the turning of Reed Richards into a villain called the Maker. In the lead-up to Secret Wars, the Ultimate Universe was almost completely destroyed, with only Miles and the Maker surviving the experience. In the new rebooted Marvel Universe, almost completely identical to the original, thus a soft reboot, Miles was integrated into the history of the world, while this evil Reed was still an outcast, not fitting into the story. And so the Maker decided to travel to another universe and make it in his image. He used time travel technology to prevent the origins of many of the heroes that should have arisen, capturing the spider before it bit Peter, moving the launch window of the Fantastic Four flight to miss the cosmic ray storm, and other tweaks like that. And what few remaining super beings were left, he organized under his control as leaders of the world who, while pretending to fight one another for territory and conflicting ideals, were secretly all conspiring to maintain control over the entire globe, while keeping the masses complacent by giving them enemies to hate. However, this new Ultimate Universe, as it's now known, did have its own Reed Richards. The Maker made sure to capture him, and when we see him, Reed has been put into a Doom-like suit as a form of torture by the Maker. Never one to waste a good resource, the Maker forces this universe's Reed to create various inventions that help the Maker keep control of this world. Later, Howard Stark, father of Tony, I told you we'd get there, is also placed into the prison with Reed, and the two are able to sabotage one of the inventions they create, called the Immortus Engine, to shut down the temporal shield to the city, a spherical structure where the Maker lives and imprisoned Reed and Howard. Long enough for Kang, leading an army of clones of Captain America, Thor, Giant Man, Wasp, and Vision, set up earlier in the series so this wasn't a Deus Ex Machina, to invade and try to kill the Maker. Howard overloads the Immortus Engine, destroying himself, the Maker, and Kang's army in one fell swoop, while Reed, still in his Doom armor, escapes with a second, broken Immortus Engine, along with the files on all the heroes that the Maker had prevented from existing. He gives this information to a young Tony Stark, and the pair are able to retrieve some of the artifacts needed to recreate these origins before the remaining leaders of the world frame Stark for an act of terrorism, leading him to go underground while the world believes he died in the same explosion that killed thousands of others. Now, the MCU has taken names from storylines in the comics and sometimes done a very loose adaptation, i.e. Civil War, sometimes only taking the name of the story and telling their own unique tale, Age of Ultron being a clear example. Also, the MCU has been good at taking the history of the comics and adapting it to the history of the MCU. For instance, making Tony and Bruce the creators of Ultron, rather than Hank Pym, who hadn't yet appeared in the movies when Age of Ultron was released. Now, we know that Avengers 6 is still being called Secret Wars. We got a brief mention or two of incursions in the Multiverse of Madness movie, where one universe infringes on another and one or both are destroyed. And in the comic, those lead into the 2015 Secret Wars, where Doom takes control of the remaining fragments left over from multiple incursions and unites them into a single world, albeit very fractured. So here's my basic theory. Doomsday will involve an alternate universe Tony Stark, instead of an alternate universe Reed Richards, going evil and becoming Doom, rather than the Maker. This Doom is the one that will either cause, or at least take advantage of, the incursions destroying most of the original MCU and other universes, leading into Doom ruling over the remaining fragments in Secret Wars. The Avengers, and Fantastic Four, who by this time will be integrated into the MCU, along with any guest stars from previous non-MCU Marvel movies, will be able to defeat the Robert Downey Jr. Doom and will restart the universe from scratch, which leaves some characters untouched, while others show back up looking completely different. In this new rebooted universe, mutants will have always been around, thus allowing the X-Men to be an organic part of this new MCU. And we will get a new Victor Von Doom, who is a recurring foil for the Fantastic Four going forward, with the Tony Stark Doom dying at the end of Secret Wars. With the MCU having gone for almost 20 years by the time Secret Wars is released, this will create an ultimate MCU that can now have new stories with characters whose original actors have moved on, Captain America, Iron Man, and so on, while those who are still under contract, the Fantastic Four actors most likely, among others, can continue on in their roles, and it will be a jumping on point for movie watchers who weren't yet born when the original Iron Man came out. Just as a "you're getting old" reminder, people born the year Iron Man came out will be 18 when Secret Wars releases. Since Fantastic Four will only have had one movie at this point, it makes sense to tie this Doom's origins into someone who has been part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe since its beginning, which will make things much more dramatic for all the characters that have interacted with Tony Stark over the years, rather than introducing a completely brand new character as the main villain of this epic story. But this is just me spitballing less than 24 hours after the big news was announced. There are other storylines, like the What If tale, Demon in an Armor, that ties Doctor Doom and Iron Man together. Do you have your own theories about the new Doom announcement and how it will work? Or do you have other questions that this or any other big news story in the geek world has prompted? As always, I'd love to hear from you. Just email me at welcome2geektown, all spelled out, at gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome-to-geektown, Twitter at Geektown Podcast, Mastodon at Welcome to Geektown at mastodon.social, or Blue Sky at welcome-to-geektown.bluesky.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcome-to-geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show, so we can all tell them, welcome to Geektown, population, us. Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All of their sound clips of the copyright material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.